I was looking up the papers on quality, and there is a GIE paper in 2015, Heterogeneous Forms, Quality and Trade. You should look up that paper in Hagen, the Alex Antonadis. My supervisor has a paper. Richard has a paper in AEJ Micro on Zeros, Quality and Space. You should look up that paper as well. There are other quality papers. Theoretical papers. These two are very theoretical papers. Most of the quality papers related to quality are empirical evidence. They should look up 2015 Journal of International Economics, Heterogeneous Forms, Quality and Trade, and Richard's paper. Richard paper means I mean Richard Baldwin and James Harrigan. Richard Baldwin is my supervisor. So Richard's paper in AEJ Micro, American Economic Journal Microeconomics, called Zeros, Quality, something like this, or Zeros, Space, and Quality. And you'll find a lot of other references and quality in the theory, though I don't remember. I've just started working on quality, so I'm also learning in the process.
So this paper, that heterogeneous forms, and that one I have read.
You have read, yes.
So this one I'll check. That's zero quality.
Yes, absolutely. You should check. I'm promoting my supervisor. That's the other point. I have a bias there. You should have a. So.
Thank you so much.
No worries. We all learn. I'm also learning, looking up the papers because I'm working on quality as well, but for a different aspect, not trade. I'm working on innovation, and because I'm also related and interested in a bit of innovation.
Well, innovation comes with quality, upgradation.
Yes.
That can be merged.
Yes. We are looking up for interesting things. Because in 1998, Indian government came up with the R&D subsidy policy to give 125% or 150% tax subsidy on 7 different industries. And there was this very nice cutoff there. They did it for in-house R&D. Yes. So these cutoffs make economists think, because cutoffs are very important for identify the heterogeneous. We are looking up whether firms with different set of in-house R&D units are doing product quality versus products. Which set of firms are investing? Because when you give some money to certain set of firms, for example, I am a big firm, you're a small firm, and we both have subsidy, our choices of products might be different. Or just how we use the subsidy might be different. Because I might be operating at the optimal level of producing output. I don't want to increase my output. If I'm producing, let's say, 15 products, why do I care of producing more? I would rather invest in something else rather than, let's say, you are producing 3 products. You might want to maximize your revenue producing more products. No, I'm not. Because I'm optimally optimizing, because I cannot expand.
So there is a paper which talks about when regulations are dropped, how does the country react? So a small country, when regulations or when things are dropped, it improves its quality. But on the other hand, because the developed country is already producing good quality, they don't need this. So there.
Please send me this paper because we're writing on capture theory model. Please send me this paper.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we are now we have empirics ready, but we are theorizing the model right now. Please do send me this paper. It will help us. Okay, so we can do 2 things now before we do the testing. So we can do a bit of effect of again empirical evidences, or we can do this Meltiz and Eaton Kortum to get into the bit of the theory. It depends on you what we want to know a bit of theory and then again do empirics a bit. Then practical we have in the afternoon. We'll do. You all have stayed there, right? Yes. And I have the data sets ready, so I can send you over the lunch, and we can write the do file and do some tasks over us. But we can do some theory now to see what actually Meltiz model or Eaton Kortum does. and then we can come back as an empirical exercise on this. And let me know, what do you guys prefer? So let me do a little bit of theory. Good. So again, let me come to start with. This is where the theory model starts. So when Meltiz came actually to Geneva when we were PhD students, because my supervisor used to organize a workshop. We, as a PhD student, were not interested at all, because all the big names would come, like him, and present papers, and we didn't have any clue what's going on. And we are interested in other parts of life, because this workshop used to happen in one of the very, very beautiful Swiss ski resort. So we are all interested in seeing the Alps more, seeing other stuff rather than listening to what Meltiz would say to us, or Jonathan Eaton would come and say to us. So, but Meltiz, one thing we learned about from him was, because my supervisor is paying for everything, I have to listen. There's no other way. Right? It would look very bad. Though we used to go out here and just sneak out, but still we had to come to listen to them. Meltiz what said was, you're seeing the model as it is now. It's famous because this is obviously after, many years after. And we, as a PhD student, we went to ask him about, because we're also thinking about doing fund level stuff. And he said that, people are very excited now. I can see it's very popular, but I can show you, like, to write this model, I have bunch of boxes. I couldn't solve the model at all. I never thought of solving the model because I couldn't solve the model for the longest amount of time. I never knew how it got popular. We were asking him, that is so popular, sir. It must be crazy. But it's not, because when you summarize it, these two main differences, like fund level heterogeneity marginal cost and each, like market entry cost, I was like, they can become very easy. I was asking that you cracked it so easily. You cracked it so easily, I have in my PhD room in Michigan the amount of unused work. This is like even 10 times or more than what I've actually produced here. And because I couldn't think of, this is how to close this model with this. So let me start with this. So main two differences which between the Meltiz and the Kortum model is the firm level heterogeneity in marginal cost, which is MCI, is different for every other firm. And then there's an extension which actually shows varieties may have a different price. Firms, prices different, varieties different. So this is also true. And beachhead cost or the market entry cost. In Kortum model, we do not have any market entry cost. Firms can freely enter the market, but Meltiz introduced a market entry cost. And in Meltiz model, it is useful to think of the marginal cost are being drawn from a lottery. It is given to you, so you go to a room and you draw a lottery, and that's your marginal cost. So innovators think of this way. So to make the intuition properly, let's say you are innovating, you are a firm, you are an innovator, you want to introduce a new variety in the market, and you want to pay a cost A5 to take a drop from the lottery bucket. To understand. So you want to introduce a new product variety into the market, but you don't know. Right? If you example, think about example. Before producing a product, how do you know the marginal cost? Don't know. Ex post you know, but example you don't know. What do you know then? Then how do you think about what the marginal cost is? They pay a market pay cost A5 to draw a lottery from the market. Think about this. Also, you can think about this as a market survey. You go out, send some enumerators out, like this is the product variety I am choosing, and who else is producing that in the market? Maybe there are 4 firms, other 4 firms producing in the market. So I want to understand what is the production process, what is the marginal cost they are producing. The survey could be a F5. That's the market entry cost. To understand what your marginal cost could be, what is the distribution, even you want to draw a distribution that this is, let's say someone is producing at 1 rupee, someone is producing at 5 rupee. But to understand this, the distribution where you belong, you need to pay a cost. Let's say market sort, right? Each draw gives a blueprint from a variety. You know what is the blueprint means, what is the production process of producing that variety. So let's say 4 farms may have different blueprints, right, of producing the variety. But the MC, but you still don't know the marginal cost, exact marginal cost of what you are producing. Associated with the new variety can't be known in advance. It is randomly associated, right? It's randomly assigned with the MC being drawn from a known distribution. You know the distribution. As I said, you know the distribution that someone is producing at 1 rupee, someone is producing at the 5 rupee. But where did you produce? Are you producing at 4.8 or are you producing at 1.2? You don't know. You know the distribution of producing the marginal cost. So ex ante, you just know the distribution of marginal cost, but you don't know the exact marginal cost. It's nowhere possible to know this. So a good way to think about this would be, think about an R&D process that leads to new products as involving some uncertainty. When you're involving in R&D to develop a new product, is that there is uncertainty, but not about the production of the new blueprint, as I said, but MC of the producing, because this you are uncertain before producing. So it's an R&D process because you are doing research and development. Research and development not only involves just developing the product, it involves a series of events across the production chain. Right? You have to think about that product, you have to conceptualize about the product, you have to market that product. All these are actually R&D events because all these go into your marginal cost because you have to cover not from the conceptual, not only for the conceptualization, you have to cover also the marketing, distribution, storing every cost into the marginal cost. So you have to think of the entire cost of developing a product from conceptualization to the marketing, all the costs involved in the different stages of producing that product into market, because you have to recover. Because you are producing, we are a profit maximizing entity, a farm. We are a liquid maximizing entity, we are a profit maximizing entity. So producing every product, I have to think, this is the marginal cost I'm producing, and this is the price I'm going to charge. So you have to think about the entire process. Okay. So distribution of MC basically was assumed in the Meltiz literature, not by Meltiz itself, is pattern. So this is simply a pattern distribution where this is the maximum marginal cost, and this is your marginal cost. This is the maximum MC, and this is the shape parameter. Is the shape parameter which shapes your distribution of your margin. Right? I am not going into at all any maths to derive this. Just you can think about if there are n farms, so the cumulative density of varieties produced would be just simply n times GM. If there are n farms, n times GM. And the price index would be n times the price index of the marginal cost times the sequence. As simple as that. If yes.
Like how to like intuitively know about this price index? The average price of
average price of it depends on the CS utility functions. CS. Everyone assumes CS, constant illustrative substitution. So I'm just not writing this because it would be too much into the model. Think about this is the entire price index, and this is the profit function. So profit function basically depends on the elasticity of substitution, the ratio of the marginal cost, your marginal cost, divided by the maximum marginal cost, the ratio, which is the inverse of the elasticity substitution, and the sales by times the number of farms and the elasticity substitution. These are specific. What I want to get into is the intuition of this, what we get from this profit function. That's why I'm showing this. Very three important points. Your farm size, which is measured by profits or sales, rises as MC falls. Why? This is your MC is this one. If it falls, because it's inverse, this would rise. Right? These are very important because that means the biggest of the farms are producing at the lowest cost. That's what we are discussing. That's why this is important, this profit function. This is what the equilibrium profit function of Meltiz says. firms operating profit rises and its MC falls. So that means big firms will be more profitable than small firms in the economy. That's a clear prediction. That means they are producing at the lowest cost, they are selling more. So the difference is high. That's why big firms are, you can see, big firms register more profit than the small firms. It's just simply because their MC is lower and they are selling more. That's it. They have more higher market access and they are producing at lower cost. Profit for all firms drop if number of firms rise. Oh, sorry. So you can see if number of firms means N. Everything constant, if N rises, this falls, profit falls. That means if number of firms enter into the market rises, average profit in the market falls down.
What about the elasticity of substitution?
Elastic substitution, we think is as constant. There's a constant elastic substitution, right? If you can move elastic substitution, things should, but these are the straight three conclusions, important points that we know from the industry. So what is the another big difference? In Krugman, they say N will rise, or the active firms will rise to the point where firm made no pure profits. Okay. So there will be no pure profits or supernormal profit where the N would rise to the, there will be, because there is free market entry. So N will keep on adding. People can go in the market. So it will rise to the point when everyone has zero profits. That's equilibrium condition. In Meltiz, it says no new firm, there is a profit in the market. And when a new firm enters the market, they do not expect pure profits. So a new firm do not expect, that's another fundamental difference. Because the profit is already being appropriated by the existing firms. The new firms cannot, because there is a market cost, entry cost. We call it in trade literature beachhead cost. Because there is a market entry cost, it's a sunk cost, you may not expect to have a few pure profits. But improvement, because there was no market cost, entry cost, you can enter and have a point to the enter, firm can enter that there is no pure profits. Okay, this is another fundamental difference between Krugman and Meltiz.
So if beachhead cost rises, if the beachhead cost rises, then profit number of firms will decrease.
Number of firms will decrease because it depends on again who can give the beachhead cost or not. We'll come to the beachhead cost now. So yes, please.
There can also be one more reason why big firms generate more profit as compared to small firms because of the knowledge they have of the market.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they have more market access. Their sale of market is much higher. They sell to more markets.
Large firms hinder the small firms about the knowledge.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Not only some. So there is this case again. As you said, of the knowledge of the market share. So Kellogg's, which of cornflakes what we use, Kellogg's is a glaring example in Mexico. Kellogg's, because it's a multinational, and Mexico, if you know, produce a lot of corn. So Mexico had a lot of local players producing corn. Okay. When Kellogg's wanted to capture that market, Kellogg's undercut himself the prices for 20 years. For 20 years. Then all the small players went out of the market and Kellogg's had a monopoly in coffee.
Just like Jio.
Just like
Just like what Jio did. They can bear the losses, but small firms
they can't.
They can't
because they can take the profit. So let's say I'm losing in the Mexican market, I can take out that money from Belgium, Norway, or something like that. I'm selling that. I'm just rising the prices from there. Let's say €1 in Belgium, in Norway, like 50 euros, something like this. So I can recover from one loss to the other market, but the local players can't. So the big players also constrain the small players to open.
Around an hour before we were talking about the competition commission of India.
Because it was in Mexico, they couldn't do. But they came out later. They came out later, but for the point in time when they understood the destruction was done, but they came out later against Kellogg's.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Indian market, Jio and Trader market.
Yes. Jio is absolutely have done like this. So if you see, there's a classic example in economics. Now they have, everything was free before. Now it all is not. Now it is not. So it's a classic example in economics. How do you constrain, take the market share and then monopolize things?
Market share, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's just, when you have a monopolization of something, then you just increase the prices a bit and bit and bit because you have no other players to go in.
Now, it is because of the collusion between politics and
Absolutely. So yeah. You can't do away with this. There has to be, to grow like this, you have to have the political economy helping you. Otherwise, you can't. And then there lies the role of the competition commission.
It is silent.
It is silent. It is absolutely silent. So yeah, these are all economics classic case. As an economist, it's very easy to see and what's going on because it's in the theory that it goes like this, and in the real world it happens.
Everyone is seeing Geo is working like that, but competition commission doesn't see.
They're also even cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. So, what's the starting point? The potential entrants, farms, pay a fine as a cost to get the blueprint. And before they know their MCs, or we denote it as rate. For any farm I, if your MCI, the farm you realize, is less than the cutoff A, which is a cutoff, let's say an A, in the firms will earn more than the FI because now you can compensate for the in some cost that you have given, which is above the normal profits from their investments. You have to earn it back, right? For any farm, if the MCI is greater than the cutoff, the highest cutoff of MC, the farms will earn less than in FI, which is below the normal profit. So that means you are losing out. If your marginal cost, for example, if you think about this distribution, which is 1 to 5, if you are producing, you realize that you are producing more the output, or you have at some level that you have to price more than 5 rupees, then there's no point in producing because no one is going to buy from you. You cannot recover your FI, your blueprint cost. If you are producing somewhere in the distribution, someone might, but if you really above the cutoff, then no one, because you cannot sell, you cannot recover your. What is the situation now? Farms pay FI, which is to get the blueprint and receive a blueprint. Observe this randomly assigned marginal cost with the blueprint. You get the blueprint, and you see, oh, this is the marginal cost. Now you have to decide. Now you see the marginal cost, you know you are above the cutoff or below the cutoff. Okay? What you do is, now you decide whether you actually want to enter the market and start producing or not. Because you know now either your distribution of MC, where you lies in the distribution of the marginal cost. That now I can produce and recover some part of the recovery. But in Meltiz, as I said, there is a market entry cost. Or if this is entering the domestic market to start selling, you give FD and start producing for the domestic markets. Only farms that earn enough to cover this FD will actually start producing. So imagine you have now 2 costs. So what is the expected cost of being an acting farm? It is, forget about this. This is your FI, which is you give to receive the blueprint, or your, let's say, setting up a plant. This is the probability that your marginal cost is less than the highest marginal cost producing that variety. That's why you decide to produce, and this is the domestic entry cost. So this is the cost that you have to incur to produce in the market. Clear, or should I go over? This is as a simple Meltiz model. Right? This is the cost that you are giving to operate in the market. This is example, this is market entry cost of the domestic farm. This is the probability that you are in the distribution of the MCs, and this is your sum cost.
So, sir, it's a probability of drawing a marginal cost. Like, what is it? Like, suppose I am like suppose I have a very like this farm is very like very knowledgeable, like it has lots of agents and human capital. So its marginal cost may be decreased, less.
Yes, that's true, but you don't know because think about, this is all about producing a new variety. Even if you're producing multiple varieties, you still don't know when I'm entering a new market segment, I am going to succeed in the market segment or not. Because for that market segment, I don't know what the consumer's preference is, what the taste is, which kind of income group buys which product. All this I have to invest. All of this goes into FI because I have to know the market. Because these are all multi-product farms. Think about when you are starting a new operation. So there are two ways. When you're starting a new operation, you doesn't know anything about the market. That's automatically applies. Even as a multi-product farm, you're operating in the market. This also applies because you are entering a new product segment, which you don't have an idea. So let's say, I'm not saying about this. This is like you are producing a toothpaste with extra crystals or less crystals. I'm not talking about this. This is this is within that market segment. You are producing a slightly differentiated product. When you are producing a new product completely, right? So FD, which is every active firm will have to pay the beachhead cost, is what? And the probability of drawing, which is this, what we talk about, probability of drawing the marginal cost, which is A, which is the highest cost of FD from the lottery, and FI is the blueprint cost. So that's the expected cost of operating in the market. Now, let's put an extra thing in. This is the simplest model. Now when the theories think about this, think about the theory always when people write down theory models, we start with always, or economists, theoretical economists, they start with always the most simplest model. That's the way to do it. Put as many assumptions as you can like and write down the most simplest model. Then start relaxing the assumptions and make the model comfortable. So that was the most simple. Then what Meltiz did was, it put an extra. Now what happens if you include trade? That's a closed economy model. Now you are doing an open economy model. We are adding an extra nation and we are adding trade cost. Because when you perform in the export market, there is a trade cost involved in the market. So, and again, even if you're doing that, put as simple as possible. Second nation is symmetric to the first because people have solved the model with the asymmetric nations as well. It's very tough to solve the model when you imagine of asymmetric nations. So what Meltiz did was nations have identical tastes, technology, market structure, labor endowment. So that, because if it doesn't, then you have to produce goods differently, right? Since we have two markets, we have two market entry cost, two beachhead cost. Now there is a fixed cost of entering the export market, which is FX. Because when you're entering the export market, think about it. You have to establish, the first thing is supply chain. You have to establish a supply chain. Whom are you going to sell in the export? Who is the importer that is going to buy your goods? How do you know that? You want to go to the export market and sell goods, but who would buy your goods? You have to ship to someone, right? That would give you the letter of credit. You have to buy. So how does exporter operate? The exporter, when they know they're selling to the market, they go to the bank. They get a letter of credit that you give me credit, I get the money from that firm, and then I give you money. Unless you have the name of someone who is buying your product, the bank is not giving you the letter of credit. That's how export happens, because you get the payment in March delay. Right? So there is a cost to this, to understand who is the buyer. You have to invest in a sense to understand the supply chain. Whom are you selling? You have to set up trade shops first, in the fair trade shops. In somewhere, let's say in the Europe, you want to sell, you go to Germany or France in the trade fairs, you set up your shop, you market your products, and I'm going to sell this product, this is a unique variety at this price. So all these are market entry costs in the foreign market. And it is expensive to sell in the foreign market. So it's very natural to assume that FX has to be greater than FD. the market entry cost or the sunk cost of entering markets in the export market is much greater than selling in the domestic market, because you still know the domestic market. Sometimes you don't as well, because if countries diverse like India, it's very also different sometimes to know. The domestic Tamil Nadu and Punjab might completely operate in a different way. So it's also, there are costs to that. In fact, selling these two different markets would be like, similarly for us, would be selling like Norway versus Italy, something very similar. It's that different in some respect. But since a typical firm can potentially sell in two markets, there will be two cutoffs. There is a threshold level of marginal cost. AD was for the domestic market and AX for the export market. Remember the diagram of yesterday? I can draw that again. So there are costs to this. Imagine AD and AX as the cutoffs to enter the domestic and the export market. So the empirical fact is only a small fraction, as we have seen, only a small fraction of firms in trade was actually export. So AD has to be greater than AX. AX has to be less than AD, because that's why we see a small set of firms exporting and import. This is exactly because you have to produce at a lower cost, because FX is greater than AD. You have to kind of take care of this, right? Because you are investing a lot. So your marginal cost has to be lower in order to cover this one. As simple as this. So the expected cost, so all this beachhead cost and cutoffs gives rise to three types of firms that we have seen yesterday. Firms that never produce, which is greater than, if you think about this again, if I draw this diagram, this is the frequency of firms. This is marginal cost. If you draw this distribution, and if you have, this is the, if this is A, the highest, or A0, whatever, then you have this, then you have this. If this is 1A, which is, this is, let's say, AD, and this is AX, 1 which is here, lies here, is the ones who are never producers. And we have vested there some cost. So never producers. I hope my handwriting is, you can understand what's going on. The firms that's only sell in the domestic market, which are non-exporters. So this is AD is greater than A, but less than, sorry, A is less. I should have put this together. Sorry. This is the domestic producers. Sorry, there is a, I would have corrected this. There is a wrong inequality here. So AD, if less than A, but greater than AX, these are the domestic producers. The other one, the firms that sell in the export market, which are exporters. So AX, which have A's here, are exporters, which can sell in both the markets, because automatically AX is less than AE, because if I can sell in the export market, I can sell in the domestic market. So expected cost of becoming an active firm is, already you have A5, which is the probability of getting an A below AD or A0 of the highest cutoff. You have the domestic, then you have the FX plus the probability that you have a marginal cost which is less than AD. That probability has to come, right? Probability of being an exporter is conditional on being an AD. If it doesn't come below this, then you cannot produce. This is what Meltiz is, more or less. It gives rises to three types of firms, given this is the cost of. You can complicate this the way you like. People have made huge amount of complications out of this, but this is as simple as Meltiz goes. So we call it, this is Meltiz light.
The gates between the products like you have like a stronger test for domestic products.
Mhm.
You have just that they are not completely substituting some
In some cases.
then how it affects.
So you mean the products that farms are producing, which different for the export market and domestic market? You mean by the quality, or you mean by completely different products? Because producers tend to produce similar products with different qualities for different markets. You see that the better products you get abroad because for the export market. You sell because you earn more from the export market. That's why you sell the high quality products. So somewhere they tweak the production process somewhere. It cannot be the labor, because the same labor is going in. Somewhere in the capital, you are tweaking the product somewhere so that these are, sometimes these are substitutable as well, right? So even if you don't have data for India, that's a big problem. And if you actually look up domestic trade, you might see that products that are being sold in Mumbai versus a third tier town, I don't know what name should I take, it would be different. Rookie is the second tier or third second tier? Third. So the product varieties, if you go, for example, even if you see product varieties and the quality of product in Mumbai or Delhi, it is much higher than Root.
Sir, not necessarily that export goods will be of higher quality. Like suppose you are exporting to Africa.
Oh no. It depends again. So millets, as I said, there's a lot of extensions because millets have now, people have done, if you change this, nations doesn't have identical taste, doesn't have identical technology. Let's say that the nation have technologically has less superior than you, then you will sell domestic goods. You will export lower quality goods. That's it. So it depends also on that. So you will see the Kortum now also is very relevant. Because if the technology changes, the market structure changes, then you sell different set of goods. So it differs across. So asymmetric, when you model this with asymmetric nations, it becomes a whole new world. Yes.
Tea can be an example.
Tea can be an example. Yes, absolutely. Tea, coffee are like prime examples.
Type of tea, we are other countries.
Yes.
Which countries are
Yes, I'm ashamed to say this. I'm carrying my tea. That's I'm carrying my Darjeeling tea, but I am carrying. We get Darjeeling tea here, but what we get there is tough to get here. So, and they are absolutely actually carrying this. So in the morning, it produces here. The point being, and the other thing we can say as a Bengali, this didn't went out of my system as of yet. So we get a very good set of fish there. We devour on fish. But the fish which is actually produces here, you get a very good quality export. So it's very different kind of stuff. So it's just an example, but there are all other kind of goods. So we have, let's say, household furnishing products, which are also very high quality. So we see products like this made out of India or made out of Bangladesh. But these are, especially in the Europe, especially about food. Any kind of food in Europe, you get higher quality than the US. Europe and Australia and New Zealand has a very high standard food quality. Very, very high standard. So the food quality, especially with respect to the food, I can say, you get very high quality.
So what would be the main reason?
Main reason they can pay for it.
Qualities have been sold in two different markets.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. First thing is, the farms know they can pay for it. Otherwise, why do you produce? You don't. So you imagine for a tea, you have to maintain a separate set of stocks. You have to maintain this only to export that, because there's a cost of going there, of maintaining the tea garden, which would be for that tea garden, which would be exported only to that country.
Psychological mindset. Suppose there are some people in Roorkee who want to buy Darjeeling tea,
You have that figure, it's just a very
mindset. People cannot afford it, or they won't like it.
Absolutely. This is so see there it is driven by the market share. If Roorkee, I'm not saying Roorkee doesn't have it, for example, but if Roorkee has only 2% of the population who rides the first flush of Darjeeling tea, for example, that's most costliest. First flush of Darjeeling tea, the farms wouldn't care. Why do I care? Because I am served 98% of the farms would not, because to serve this 2%, the amount of cost, because you have to store that product very well, you need high transfer, very quick transport, all these costs that I've entered, that market share wouldn't give me that profit. So farms segment markets very, very carefully because all they care about is profit. The profit maximizing entity, I don't care about if I am not having profits. From here, I am not serving that market. As simple as that. So it doesn't depend on, it depends on the proportion of people demanding that product. So that's why high quality, we've shown the graph that high quality products are sent to markets which have higher GDP. It's a very simple as that. You send to the people who would pay for your product.
It can also be the reason why tier 3 cities are not being developed.
Yes, but that's a but not being developed is a developmental question. No, it's not about much more about trade. It's a developmental question. What do you mean by
Suppose there are some products, high quality products, which are being sold in the tier 3 cities, suppose Turkey. A small amount of people are buying it. If I'm buying it, see like a product, I offer it, he will buy it too. For a long time of period, after some long time of period, he will buy it. But there can be chances now that population grows, it can buy that particular product.
Yes, but the other part, so you can imagine, think of this, that let's say if you have a high quality product here, these high quality products are only bought by the, let's say the IIT Roorkee professors or the government officials, IS officers, the police, the IPS officers being posted here. People around those social circle, I am professor here, for example, you come to my social circle and you kind of test that product you like. But no one will be, not a high percentage of people will be integrated into that product. That's the point. Even, let's say when we studied, when we studied in Delhi in the mid 2000s, the things in terms of, let's say, I give you an example for cheese. The cheese we used to see, foreign produced cheese in Delhi markets, still used to get very, very particular shops. Close to JNU, there was a particular shop. There we used to sometimes go buy something or the other. There had, if you go to these big markets called INA market, you'll have. But you now, because income has grown, you will find this more often than before. It's just that they will concentrate in Basant Bihar because they know that people of that area could only come and buy this. That's it. Otherwise, it's a cost to sell a product as well. That's why the farms, because again, the farms are very uncertain. Everything is driven by uncertainty when you're selling a product. When you are actually a new market, because think about West Delhi, South Delhi, East Delhi, North Delhi as different markets, different countries. When you are selling something in West Delhi, you know the income of West Delhi is lower than South Delhi. We know this. Firms also know this. Now, which segment of that West Delhi is going to buy your product? Which part of it, which is actually available in the South Delhi in a more common fashion? That uncertainty drives. We'll see this in today actually in our educated cases. The uncertainty drives investment down. When you have uncertainty, farms don't invest. When you have uncertainty, farms do not innovate. Farms, because uncertainty gives an uncertain profits. Uncertainty in the market gives uncertain profits. So the farms would know that, okay, I know IIT professors would buy it. I know the IS officers here posted here, IPS officers would buy it. But who else after that? Would their circle grow more so that they would buy high quality products? As a farm, I don't know this. Right? As a manager, marketing manager or sales manager of that area, I don't know. So I would be very skeptical in investing a store. Yes, yesterday, no, day before yesterday, my bag, which I was carrying, got busted. In a sense, the chains. So I wanted to buy one, and I couldn't find. So I was in Bangalore, and I couldn't find any repairing shop. My friend from is a faculty in Bangalore also got, "Oh, what? There are no, the students are so rich here that they don't go and get and they just get their chains changed. It's just a simple change, and we have done it so many times. And I was taking the advantage of having in India that I can do this. We couldn't find, so we went. I went to, before taking the flight. I went to my friend's house, and they called it. I never knew this. Called it Blinkit. What? What do you mean by Blinkit? They said they 20 minutes it can deliver. I have flight, so I'm going to buy the bag for you. I mean, boy, I have flight in 2 hours, 3 hours. No, it's 20 minutes. So how can a bag, you can buy a bag? Are you going to the mall? No, you sit, you come. So imagine, so this, what gives it, it's a bigger economic question. I don't know, how is the revenue model? Because you have to think first with economic, what is the revenue model? What is the cost and what is the price that you are charging? Because if you are 20 minutes, that means every locality or neighborhood has to have something, a store. Then they said, yes, that's called dark store. Yes, that's that. Theoretically, it makes sense to me. What is it? So that hard, but you are investing in a dark store also because you know for certain that that area has a demand for this kind of goods. And also they said, what they said was very interesting. This is also, there is pure economics running through this. Or this e-commerce is extreme, like the economics at its core. So there's a revenue sharing model. I don't know why, as a farm, are you invest in a dark store? No, you don't invest in a dark store. Someone locally who invests in a dark store get about 25 to 30% profit out of it. And that means the market price is a little higher. And absolutely, because you're saving the energy, the time going to the mall. So there's a very nice solution model here, which running the e-commerce is running economics at its best, actually. But as an economist, I could make sense that 20 minutes of bag is delivered, but there's a simple profit maximizing economics running at the background. As simple as that. You can imagine the trade is happening. This is also trade. Also, right? This is not international trade, but this is also trade. The farms are selling to other farms. That is also trade. But this running through very simple economics here. Good. I have few minutes. Let's see what Eaton Kortum does. Eaton Kortum, what they does was international trade. Again, all these come with simple facts. This theory model comes up out of empirical facts. So you can think about that. What are the empirical facts? Trade diminishes dramatically with distance. We know all this. This is particularly gravity model. That the farther away the nations is, even though trade cost has gone so much down, there is a huge amount of reduction in trade costs, but still trade diminishes dramatically with distance.
And for this trade costs, like in the previous slide, you discussed about trade costs. So, the after trade costs or like the tariffs and all.
Market entry cost is different. Trade cost is tariffs. Or cost of shipping. Cost of shipping has gone down significantly. Prices vary across locations, with greater differences between places farther apart. The farther apart is, prices vary that much. Factor rewards are far from equal across countries. Like how you get, what are the factor rewards? Is the wages, for example. The wages is a factor reward. From labor, you get wages. That's factor reward, right? Your labor is a factor reward is the wages. It's not equal across countries. Countries' relative productivities vary substantially also across industries. So if you think about the first two together, it says geography plays an important role in economic activity. Because there is distance, there is variability of prices across locations. So there is a factor, significant, geography plays a significant role. If you put together the two ones, the countries, that means countries work with very different technologies. Countries produces goods with very different technologies. Do not always think about Europe, because Europe has a technological transfer agreement in place, so they can easily access each other's technology. Europe is not an ideal place to think about it. And it's easy for you because borders are open, there is technological transfer, there is technological consulting. It's very easy to adopt each other's technology. If you go in terms of technological indexes, you will see Europe is very similar. So Eaton Kortum comes from Jonathan Eaton and Sam Kortum. Now late Jonathan Eaton passed away, develops a Ricardian model of international trade based on differences in technology. Think about now what is the difference, fundamental difference with Meltiz is Meltiz worked with marginal cost. Eaton Kortum worked with technology. He said technology is different. Why I produce different goods? Because my technologies are different. I'm using different goods. And there is a role of geography. Geography also plays a significant role in terms of how I produce my goods. Where to sell, that means where to sell. I use that kind of technology to produce my good depending on the geography, depending on where I sell. Again, the quality aspect comes. By default, the quality aspects comes in. So, like Meltiz, Krugman had Dixits and Stiglitz in mind. That was the fundamental. These had Dornbusch, Fisher, Samuelson. This is a micro which has two country Ricardian model with a continuum of goods. This was the basis for Eaton Kortum. And Eaton Kortum takes this and deviates this by using a probabilistic formulation of technological heterogeneity. So everything in Eaton and Kortum depends on distributions. You have to calculate probabilities of everything. Everything depends on this. I'll show you what are the probabilities, important probabilities, employing a probabilistic formulation of technological heterogeneity. So there are technologies which are different, and this has, again, you are drawing in Meltiz, you are drawing a marginal cost of which belongs to a distribution. Here, you are drawing, actually, you are choosing a technology which follows a distribution. That's it. This is one of the difference. It extends the world to many countries separated by geographic barriers. It didn't have in Meltiz. And it had a tractable and flexible framework for incorporating geographical famous into geographical analysis. So nowadays, people who solve for the spatial models, spatial trade models, follow a lot of Eaton Kortum because it helps to solve the model in general framework. I'm just giving you the simple assumption. So what the model was with heterogeneous firms, but Meltiz had perfect competition. People have done it with imperfect competition, beachhead cost results pretty much the same. However, heterogeneity here is not within a nation, but rather between nations here. And this depends on nations have different technologies. And this is pure from a Ricardian model. You think of the Ricardo said, I produce goods differently from you because I have different technological endowments. So it's a very, follows Ricardians. And the basic setup was, there's a number of nations, and Eaton and Kortum said simply labor. There's labor endowment. There's a continuum of goods. I produce a continuum of goods. There's perfect competition. There's constant returns to scale. There is CES, identical across nations, and there is iceberg trade cost. So there is tau OD, origin, destination, and so origin to destination is greater than 1 because this is the amount of goods that must be shipped from O to D to basically sell 1 unit in D. So it has to be, what are you shipping? As we said, right, goods lost in transit. So you have to sell more than 1 to get 1. And this has to be 1 because intra-nation trade cost is 0. Right? There is no trade cost. It's not particularly used to be not for a country like India. Now it is because there was a lot of inter-trade tax. Used to be. With GST that has come down. But used to be when you sell goods from, let's say, Uttarakhand to Delhi, I don't know, or Himachal, there used to be a lot of taxes. Separate taxes that you have to pay when the goods has to cross the border, state borders. It not used to be. Now not. But it used to be. State taxes were different. That's why people used to sell within the state more rather than interstate.
I'm not able to increase in returns.
They have not used increasing returns. They have used because technology, I guess technology changes everything. Because technologies are inherently follows a distribution, I think they can do it with a perfect competition and constant returns to scale. Because technology by default would take care of constant returns to scale. It would have been, I guess, more complicated. I don't know who. No, people have also used IRS and results are still similar. There is a paper extended right after this by Bernard and Schott, I guess, who have extended with IRS and the results are more or less. So each nation's manufacturing technology is very simple, is a vector of labor input coefficients. Comes from a simple, again, technology generation process like Meltiz, but they don't have any cost. In Eaton and Kortum, imagine they have this, when you are getting marginal cost, they had to give FI. But in Eaton and Kortum, there is no FIs. There is no cost. It's only an exogenous process is costless and realizations are drawn, again, very similar. Realizations are drawn before the analysis opens, before you start producing. Before you producing, you know where is the technological distribution you belong to. Before you know the marginal cost where you belong to, you now know the technological distribution you belong to. This is a simple country's unit labor coefficient. If you draw from the nation specific, this is a simple distribution which follows with your technology and your labor input. So you produce output with your simple technology and that's it. It's a technological parameter which differs across countries, and obviously a bigger technological T0 means a high efficiency for any good. So T0 is nation's absolute advantage. So where is the advantage that comes in here? Before, the advantage used to come from marginal cost. Now the advantage comes from technological parameter and across nations. And draws are independent across goods and nations. Perfect competition only means only the lowest cost supplier actually sells in destination B, because there is perfect competition happening. So price in each nation could, a country could offer, country offering of selling a good J of origin O in destination B depends on the trade cost that between A and O, the labor endowments, and the technology. These are the three factors. Okay. So the equilibrium price would be what? What we are selling in destination D or good J is the minimum of all the prices. If you are in the minimum distribution of all the prices, you are selling the goods in that, given your technology. Very simple as this. So what is the next step? Because that's why Eaton and Kortum is very difficult, is to find the probability that particular nation is the lowest supply of particular good in a particular market. That is the probability that you have to calculate. Think about it carefully. It involves a series of probability calculations. That means when you are selling, for example, to you from here, you're not only calculating the probability calculations of a good which are other nations, which not only around, let's say example, South Asian countries have a similar technological level. For example, think of this is a hypothesis. You not only have to take about the calculations of the South Asian countries' probability distribution, but all around the world have to calculate the probabilities of what is the distribution of prices that they are selling in the world, given the technology, given their level. Where do you belong in that distribution to sell, in the price distribution to sell in the market? That's the probability that you have to take. So you can see what are the key probabilities that you have to make in the Eaton Kortum model, that you are one of the most competitive in a given good. How does you calculate? Your competitiveness divided by all the nations. That's the probability, right? How much are you competitive given all other countries? Think about, go back to Ricardo. Again, the whole thing is exactly what Ricardo said. The absolute advantage. If you have an absolute advantage, you can sell a good. What we have done is, we have just made it more mathematically complex to understand the probabilistic distribution. You have to calculate this.
But it is giving a sum of all nations.
Of the competitiveness. So what the sum of all nations means is the sum of the price distributions of all nations selling in the union. Given that where you are, what is the probability that you belong in that price distribution? See, the classical economists actually thought about a lot of things. Like if we have to give posthumous Nobel, these guys would have been with the front run. Actually, they have done this. We have done. So you think about this econometrics. Gauss, what Gauss has did 150 years back, minimization of errors. We still doing it. We haven't progressed after minimization of errors. So Gauss would be the first one to actually give a posthumous Nobel. This simple thing, minimization of error, and that's it. Everything ends there. You may complicate it, you put different kinds of error, that's a point different thing. But minimization of error, point ends there. So what are the two difficulties? Why Eaton and Kortum is a bit difficult model to solve? What is the problem? Is since we don't know each nation's actual labor coefficient, we don't know what Africa is using, African countries is using, we don't know what Latin American countries are using, we can't determine the price of a given good. It's very difficult to understand the distribution of what the distribution of the other countries selling to the UK, because we don't know the labor endowment of each good the country is using to produce. That distribution, where do we get the distribution? It's very difficult to get all this data, right? Rather, we find the distribution of prices nation, the D actually pays. You don't know the production prices, but what you know the selling prices. You can infer from the selling prices, but you don't know actual production prices. So that is a very key difficulty, because you have to take the production selling prices into account to infer about the production prices. So due to competition, the lowest price is the equilibrium price. So it makes it impossible almost to explicitly solve Eaton Kortum for general trace cost, as all nations' wages enter the system non-linearly. Because it's not a linear, because you don't know how it's a quadratic function of your wage or a triple function of, you just don't know where the wages are. Because you don't know, it's not a linear extension of the wages that we are paying. That's why we can't solve the model with trade cost. The other one is the distribution of prices of that goods that nation O exposed to nation B. Goods that nation O actually exposed to goods D depends on the cross-good distribution, right? For prices or exports from every other origin to nation B. You are selling in that market depends on this cross distribution of other goods of other countries having different technological parameters selling in that country. You can sell in that country or not. So it is the competition within the nation B that actually determines the prices, not the characteristics of a particular nation. Here, and Meltiz, this also differs from Meltiz. In Meltiz or in standard trade model, the particular nation characteristics actually matters. In Eaton and Kortum, is the competition within the nation to determine the prices, because we don't know the wages or the labor endowment that goes into the producing of the goods. So these are very key difficulties, and the technological parameter. The other key difficulty, sorry, I forgot to write this. The other key difficulty in Eaton and Kortum is the technological parameter. Like the MCs, they have followed the parallel distribution. Here, the technology follows a difficult distribution called Frechet distribution. It's another difficult FRECHET, Frechet distribution, which is difficult to solve. Parallel distribution is very easy to solve, but Frechet is not an easy distribution to solve.
First, why Frechet was preferred?
Why Frechet was different? Because so what they thought about so Pareto had a meaning. Pareto doesn't work good on the continuum of goods or continuum of technology. Frechet works good on the continuum, because they say it's so minutely distributed. Inherent differences are so minute that Frechet distribution only kind of matched this.
When he came out with a Pareto fix, they check the data and then see.
I'm sure they have done it. They would solve the model, and they have done others
Check the properties
of the model. So I've taken a part of your lunch time. I hope I could clear some of See, if you are still unsure, I'm happy to. I've tried to present it the most simplest way that is possible without much questions. And because see, there's no point of working out the model in so less time, just to get the intuition. What are the key things or the key problems? That's it. If you know, then you kind of work it out. Then you go back. Okay, thank you. Let's have a break for lunch.